Hi, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to Agile Network India, a thought leadership community. Yes, so we are very thankful to our founding sponsor, which is Innovation Roots. It is a leading consulting and training service provider, helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and is well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. For more information, please visit www.innovationroots.com. We are also very thankful to our sponsor, Agile, which is a product offering from Tata Consultancy Services Limited. And it is a purely cloud-based enterprise agile planning tool along with DevOps capabilities. Enterprises can use Agile to adopt agile practices or scale across multiple Scrum and Kanban teams using enterprise scaling frameworks such as SAFe, Disciplined Agile, Less and More. You can try out Agile for free for up to 20 users for 1 year by signing up at agile.io, or you can also reach out to us for any inquiries or exclusive product demo. I request everyone to check out the Agile page on Agile Network India website for more information. So moving further with our first session for the day, which is hosted by Bengaluru Chapter, we have Prasad Menon here with us today, and he's going to talk about how not to drive a diversity initiative.
Thank you for this opportunity. And when I got this invitation from Agile Networks, I looked through all the topics for the day, and we all saw it today. The first thing that strikes out is this particular topic is certainly out of place. And the second thing for all of us to ponder, and I pondered, is why is this topic given to the male of the species? Right? And I think this is now getting unconventional to the second degree. And my qualification is, you can see, 2 decades in HR, but I'm an engineer who has never done my MBA, right? So I managed to hoodwink the industry for a good over 2 decades. So I guess that doesn't add too much to the credibility. So I was wondering what the hell, right? I mean, this is kidding, and it's in the morning session among the first session for the day. So I don't know what I was wondering what Agile Network India had in mind when they asked this man with a streak of madness to present in the morning. But then, like the Uguay will come and enlighten you. I realized very quickly how you find your inner peace, right? I looked at the topic, and there is a big knot in the topic, and I'm a big knot, right? And then I said that, okay, now things seem to be falling in place, right? All the knots that I am, and the topic is a knot. Now it seems to actually make sense. So it's surely a privilege for me to have an opportunity to talk, especially on this topic. I was almost generally I prepare and I take seriousness in terms of preparing a couple of days in advance. But given the pandemic and huge escalation last 2-3 weeks, given your running operations as well in an org was really, really intense. But yesterday when we met for a dry run, I didn't have anything. I had no thoughts. But this topic was so close that I decided that I should come in here. So I'll do the best to share perspectives. I may actually leave you all with more questions than answers. I may provoke you more than enlighten you in any way. Right? Most of you with your experience and background, some of you were humble enough to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I guess you are masters in your own ways. So I'll just share stories and perspectives. You can see I'm in the bedroom in the house. That tells you where I am in the food chain in the family. My daughter is behind me because this topic is very close to her. And I'm looking at my wardrobe as well. It's a very unusual time. Every day I open the wardrobe and I look at my pants and say, sorry, pants, I can't date you today. And just when the world was getting better, I had to go back and tell the pant it's going to still be a long, long time before we date each other. So I hope all of you are safe. The way I would probably like to share my thoughts is through stories. I'm not a big believer in in prescribing things and advising. History has taught us that Socrates did that and they poisoned him. So I'm going to stay away safely from that. I believe that the world is not just filled with protons and neutrons, they are filled with stories. And stories is what makes this world come alive. So I'll try to present it through stories. Um, the first thing that I'm going to probably say is, why are we even talking about diversity, right? And now this is getting crappy, right? This guy is coming here, and he's telling he has to supposed to talk on a topic like diversity, and then he is saying that why are we even talking about diversity? Well, it's actually going to get a little more provoking, right? Now, we all 99 odd 99% are actually prejudiced in some form. We have our own unconscious biases as well in our own way. Now, if you're all sorry, some of you didn't like it, but that's the truth. And it's not a bad thing in a way, but it's important for us to recognize it, right? If you actually see human beings, and you go back to one part of the brain, the limbic brain. The limbic brain is where matters such as our ability and how we look at somebody who is different from us, and just that we see them as a threat is actually deeply embedded. And this is embedded since the time of the cave people. What's happened over a period of time is that we have evolved. We have evolved where now today we are all interacting in such a diverse environment, multicultural environment, with different kinds of people, all the mixtures put together. But the limbic portion of our brain has not evolved as much. So subconsciously, even with everything that we say, diversity is important, diversity is important, the limbic part of our brain will say, hey, not so diverse, not so diverse. And they see anything different usually as a threat to as a threat to your own existence. And that's how the mind is conditioned. There is this, if I can play the video, this is just a very famous experiment. If the video doesn't play, you should actually look up this very hilarious video of an experiment where they took two monkeys. So the experiment had two phases. The first phase was, the two monkeys, they were rewarded when they would do a trick, and with a cucumber. So whenever the two monkeys with a separator would do a trick, they would be given a cucumber. Then in phase two of the experiment, one of the monkeys that performed the trick, they gave a grape. And monkeys are actually extremely fond of fruit, especially a grape. And the other monkey that performed the trick was given a cucumber. So what do you think really happened there? Right? And this continued. So one of the monkeys, particularly when they performed the trick, was given a grape, and the other monkey was given a cucumber. This is almost like when you perform the same task, your reward, one person who did the task got a crappier reward, right? So what do you think was the reaction of the monkeys? I'll just show you a hilarious reaction, right? All right. So I'm just going to play this section alone for a few seconds. Well, not surprising. So on the contrary, when you, in the same spirit that I shared about what is ingrained in terms of our limbic brain towards our outlook for anything that is different, in the same note, we and all experts say that human beings have the ability to quickly see inequality and traces of inequality and sense it anywhere. We are wired in a way that we are able to pick up inequality, right? And in this case, if you actually go, the subject is a little more tense. When there is and this inequality is also something which actually goes all the way again back to the cave people times. When they hunt in groups, and when the ration of food is less for one person, immediately the brain sends out a wave. In my world, there is inequality. And then there's a trigger to it. And you feel threatened. And it induces stress. And stress induces high states of inflammation. So wherever in the environment there is presence of inequality, then in the minds of the person and the individuals that perceive that inequality, there is constant stress that leads to inflammation. And research has also said that that form of stress is extremely detrimental to your health and mental being. Cancer, heart diseases, all of them are actually attributed to this stress. So the point I'm making is that when we talk about inequality, it is not a program or an agenda. It's actually, frankly, far more deeper than that. It is something that affects the health and well-being of individuals, right? So I think we should drop this whole aspect about diversity. We should be instead looking at inclusion and equity. That's the point that I want to actually invoke before we begin, right? So diversity is actually a measure, and actually it's safer probably to think of diversity, but the real pursuit, the real attribute that we need to actually see and solve for is inequity, or the restaurants of balance, or how the world is equitable, how practices are equitable. So I wanted to kind of share that, because in this world, and especially HR people, they are very, very used to using a lot of jargons, like um, micro inequities, unconscious biases. I don't know, right? I can tell you 20 names. But and when they speak, usually the funny part is that nobody opposes, and it's not necessarily they understand it, but they don't want to be the people saying that, look, I don't understand this jargon. And the question really is, do we know things at much deeper level? Do we understand things at a much deeper level and keep things very simple while we are just usually using these words, diversity, inclusion, right? So I wanted to kind of keep that as a base. Now, if you see here, diversity typically, it's like a measure. Now, this is the measure, right? There is a gender ratio here, and I'm talking about diversity in this slide from a gender ratio perspective. And let us say that, what does this indicate? 16% are women. What it means that in your hiring, let's say this is the hiring pipe of all the people that we hired over last year, and 16% of them are women. Now, what does that mean? It means that somewhere in your hiring pipe, there is inequity. That's what it indicates. Now, let's look. We worked hard, we put measures, and that pie now has moved to 33% or 30%. Wonderful, right? So we have solved for diversity, we have solved for inequity. What do you think? Actually, no, right? When you look at these measures are indicating only to an extent that, let's say, as an organization, as a team, we are committed to getting on board diverse individuals. It could be men, women here. So we got more women into the group. But it doesn't mean anything more than that. It doesn't talk about how, once they are on board, they are treated. It doesn't talk about how their pay scales are equitable or not equitable. It doesn't talk about aspects like respect. And that is where equity really functions. It's almost saying that here is an invitation to the party. Everybody is invited to the party. So everybody arrives at the party. But then how you get treated and how you dance at the party, that is where the distinction of equity resides. Right. So I kind of wanted to share that. But now you'll ask me, right, Prasad, you told me about stories. And where are the stories, right? So here is my 3 stories that I'll present to you. Here is my first story. My first story is with my daughter Kavya. Incidentally, she's sitting behind me, and she doesn't know that I'm going to talk about her. So I'm taking your permission. But anyway, Kavya was extremely ambitious about playing football. And when she was about 8 odd years old, she got a kit. She enrolled into a professional football coaching, and she would set off with excitement to play among the boys and get trained. The movie Bendit, like Beckham, did a world of wonder to her aspiration. And I was noticing this as a proud father. But slowly, as the days went by, I could see that whole enthusiasm around her wearing the boots and going to play, that expression was very different. It was a, an expression of somebody going out for war, somebody going out to prove a point. It was no more joyous. It was no more, like play and passion. It was about, I want to show something, I want to prove something. Then I quickly realized the issue was that she was the only lone girl in a bunch of boys who were playing football, and nothing said, everything is open. Nobody would pass the ball to her. They always wondered, what is a girl doing playing football? And the whole fact that people wouldn't pass a ball, she wouldn't get equal right, equal push. They will be like, she's a girl and let's not push her around. All that played on her mindset. And in her mind, what was really going is, this is not equitable, right? I saw her one day um, taking an old book, which actually is on my table. And I saw her intensely after one of her football sessions draw something. And I didn't know what she was drawing really. Many years later, actually, about last year, I picked up this book from my cupboard. And actually, that is the drawing that Kavya made, right? And normally I would just flick through thinking that it's a scrap drawing. But then when I looked at this drawing, if you see the drawing here, it kind of tells you about what an 8-year-old girl experiencing a world of unconscious biases and the effect of it, where she had an aspiration and her deep expression around how the world appears to her. Very, very inequitable. The day you're born in this world, unfortunately, when you're a boy or a girl, you're boy or a girl, you're sometimes wrapped either in a blue or a pink cloth, right? It starts right from there. So there are unconscious biases. This is a story just to invoke that many things in life just happens in front of you. And as a father, I have been witness to that. The next story that I'm actually sharing with you is the story of Santosh and actually Surya, both of them. Now, both the parents, Jaykumar and Karpagam, this is in Hosur. We have a community project on sustainability, and one leg in Bangalore, one leg in Hosur. So every weekend we used to drive down into a community project, and en route, I could see the parents and sometimes the two kids. They used to sell in Tamil Nadu. There is something called a school. It's a millet drink, 15 rupees a glass. And obviously, I used to stop and have many times. You pick up a conversation, and then you get into lives of people. You realize that both the parents are selling this drink. They actually initially were bonded laborers in a bricklane factory, and their two kids are actually studying in a government school. No matter what, the eldest is actually the girl. She looks tiny, but she's the elder one, and the parents are committed that the children go to school, which is a big thing in that social strata. So we picked up both the kids, yeah, and we have journeyed with them throughout these years. Surya completed her BSc Computer Science and MSc Computer Science with distinction. Santosh also completed his engineering with distinction. So I'll take a pause here. What do we usually say, right? Finally, they made it. Right? Usually we say that, right? Finally, they made it. But let us look slightly deeply inside of what this is. Getting an admission, for example, to a college is not like this Willy Wonka ticket, golden ticket that these children have got, it is extremely, extremely difficult. In the college, despite all these things, generally, you will notice the system has unsaid systems, right? I would call all of them probably uh, the poor, privileged children who made it to the college. And the two big disadvantages they face at the college, right at the doorstep, is poverty and inequality, right? So let's kind of break that, what that actually is, right? So in college, the ecosystem, with, let's say, the lecturers talking about jargons like we use in the office, they don't understand it. My children are, they have a very different level of exposure. They have studied in schools where the genesis of education is form relationship with your teacher, ask questions, um, who you know, how you know, and how they know you, everything matters. And both Santosh and Surya, for example, studied in a place that didn't have a teacher. It was regimented, if at all there was one single teacher, and it was not okay to ask anything, right? So the level setting in the college when they get it, having said that, they made it, it is vastly different. They have to raise and challenge with children and mindsets and cultural differences, which are enormous even for you and me to sometimes fathom, right? Santosh did make that there was additional support systems to whatever extent that give, but the boy had resilience. Most of them have resilience when they come from this economic strata, and he got through campus during this downturn time, and he has started his career, and one cycle done. With Surya, it's a different story for another day. She passed out her final exam, and being the eldest girl, they got her married, and immediately after her marriage, her in-laws didn't believe that she need to work. Imagine, from 8th standard, I have also equally worked with them. They have nurtured for one dream, when I will grow up and become something. Today, um, 1 month away to her job, she had a job also at her hand. She's at her home. She's now a mother of a little one. But all those years of hardship, hopefully she has her education behind them. It was a two different contrasting stories, right? One was to me a heartbroken one, and hopefully someday that dream will get unfolded. The other is, a boy who's reached somewhere, and probably another generation is probably out of clutches of poverty. Another interesting thing is, when I was with McAfee, we ran this CSR initiative. I'm not a big believer in cutting checks. I believe in taking courses and working on a sustained manner through a period of time to achieve something. It's more a difficult task. So we picked up urban poor children education. The program started with about 25 children, government school children, and how do we increase the 10th pass percentage? Soon enough, for our wildest dream, it grew multiple branches, and at some point, it touched peaks of 50,000 children in Bangalore that were in this program. Many doctors, engineers unfolded. There are many things that were done under the program. One of those programs was a sub-program called as Uttejna. The whole program of this initiative was Prema Vidya. So in this sub-program, that image that you see here is we pick up the scholar students, about 25 or 30 of them, and we bring them into the corporate, into McAfee. And over a 3-month period, we actually train them on computer skills, life skills, and we spend time over that 3-month period. I have seen probably 4 or 5 batches every year, and I have seen and understood and realized and learned. These children are probably tongue-tied. Um, they have never rubbed shoulders. They have never seen the doors of a corporate world. And these children, ultimately, at the end of 3 months, that sheer exposure that is given to them, put them into a very. They were hard to stop after that. At the end of 3 months, they would make presentations and then they would submit. You also realize many things, right? After their +2, for most of them, while they do college, they also need to work. And what I realized is that the skills that we gave them actually helped them get a job where probably my son or my daughter would be doing it for a hobby and getting some pocket money. For them, it was real survival. Among all the programs, we always take a feedback, right? Uttejana has multiple, Premavidya has multiple stream of programs. We did a survey with all the people who have been through this program. Among everything that we have done, what is the singular thing that made a huge difference for you? They actually valued that they spent at the corporate. And the reason and the realization I got was far deeper, right? When most of them, we also gave a lunch and a snack in the office, and I didn't realize the value of that was so precious, because most of them came from a background that they didn't even have one proper meal. So the meal that we gave in the office meant the world to them. Going those 3 months made a huge difference for them in terms of their life and exposure. Because when we talk about vacation for our kids, for many of them, we don't even realize that's how the system works. Take the vacation, go and enjoy, right? We make travel plans. But we don't realize that for many people who are in this strata, vacation actually means not going back to a home. So, not going back to home, not going back to a place where there is proper food. Um, so, the corridors of lights that gets blanked out, this lockdown time, we don't even realize that we talk about our kids homeschooling. For many of the people, they are completely in a very different realm. Home means hurt. They don't have a place to go. So the point that I'm trying to make is, do we even realize that there are fundamental iniquities that exist in the system, right? So the point that I wanted to share is that we got to understand that creating access does not mean equity. We all need to move from creating access to actually creating equity, right? Access does not mean equity. And of course, this whole session is about, what not to do about diversity, right? And I kind of thought about it, but I wanted to start this out by slowly kind of invoking that really in our world, these subjects are far more deeper. So if you look at this and we want to drive it in our community, in our corporate, then what should be some of the things we should avoid? So there are 8 things that I could gather and present to you. One is, uh, equity and inclusivity is not tokenism. Many often, what we drive as DNI in the corporate is only as thin as the paper it is written on. It is well meaning, it looks good, but beyond that, there is no depth to it. So let us not do a program so that it is just in the name of, here's a check mark. Of course, in India, there is also the legal aspects of this, right? And it doesn't mean that I have put the system in place. There's a posh committee. There are 2-3 policies that are set in place. Check mark. So this cannot be driven as tokenism. It's far deeper than that. Second is, when you set this up, you need to have both the hardware and you need to have the software. So hardware is absolutely your policies, your systems, what happens, the regulatory things. They need to be soundly in place and very clearly in place. And then you also need to have the software, which is invoking minds. What's our philosophy? What are our goals? How do we want our workplace to be? How do we want our behaviors and interaction to be? When one doesn't happen, the other happens, it's a problem. When you have, for example, you invoke a lot of people in your corporate team and you don't have the hardware, then you have a lot of ignited minds, but you don't have a process and a system to take care of this ignited minds. Then you'll have a much bigger issue on your hands. Similarly, you have a hardware and it's all rigor, but you don't have ignited minds, then it's almost like you have a body and you don't have the soul, right? Third is, do not look at DNI, inclusivity, and equity as a problem statement. It is important for us to probably change that and say there is no problem. why don't you flip it and look at it as opportunity and mostly focus on growth opportunity? It's always positive to look at here is the opportunity rather than say there's a problem, because a problem with the problem is that when you spell it as a problem, then it occurs to that something is not right in everybody's mind, and then it has got a negative context. But when you say how can we become more, it's got a far more positive connotation, and that actually is very powerfully enrolling, and that energies gives you much more momentum than focusing on saying that something is not working. Certainly move diversity and inclusion out of HR. The most crappiest thing to do is have HR and have DNI kind of initiatives run as part of HR and CSR. So what happens is if they are run as part of HR and CSR, they are like this fringe in the fringe programs in your organization. Simply put it, even from an investment, what is investments in CSR and HR? They are all your cost center investments. They are expenses. We need to move these programs right into the center of where the organization is, and these are important because they funnel growth. Therefore, they become investments for growth, and they do not become an expense kind of a program in the organization. So certainly, it has to be moved out of HR and CSR. It is very important to know what most of them, they said they have the community, but they have no idea, or they have not spelt it clearly in terms of what does this initiative really solve for. And the simplest way to look at three things is, what is my goal? What is the measure of that goal? And over what time that we need to achieve that goal. These three things need to be spelled, and that should be the pursuit, not emphasis just on the framework, the governance, the policy, the mechanism, the people, but then what is the goal, right? It should solve for respect, not recognition. Many times these initiatives are run and the pursuit of this initiative is towards some forum to get recognized in the top 100 list. So the pursuit is recognition. But in reality, the pursuit, that could be an outcome. But the real pursuit has to be, how can people in my marketplace, in my workplace, feel respected? So solve for respect, not for recognition. Last, and this is the seventh point, right? It should be a mindset for growth. Many times it has a good beginning. You do audit, you find the problem statements, you define what the goal, and then you make a good beginning. But then after that, it steams off. So it has to be a framework where this is right in the center and central of the organization to be able to give a sustained growth and opportunity. Unless over a period of time you're seeing change and you're seeing equity in your promotions, in the way you're hiring, and you're confident about it in the behaviors in the workplace, it has to be a sustained manner. It has to be led from the leadership team. The eighth one, there are only 7 points here, right? There is no eighth one here. See, the eighth one is probably for us to experience. And let me take you through this journey. If you're all with me, if you can hear me well, we'll do a small exercise. If I can request all of you to just sit wherever you are, you're standing, sitting, in whatever, but be comfortable in your position. And for a moment, I'm going to request all of you to close your eyes and only listen to what I'm going to share. So shall we go in a minute? So please take your posture. Do sit upright, take a deep breath, relax, and please listen to me. We are living in this fascinating world where every minute that we live in this fascinating world, over 100 hours of video gets uploaded. When a day gets over, there are more than 500 million tweets. But with all this information comes a lot of noise, a lot of clutter. How much listening there really is in this world? For a moment, let us just take the last 1 year of this pandemic. For a moment, let us sit and recognize what has altered in the workforce. Do I know that I'm sitting here in Bangalore in a flat, multi-bedroom? Do I know that one of my colleagues is sitting out in Bombay in a 600 square feet house? She's got 2 school-going kids who are doing homeschooling. Do I even recognize what her life is? We have been conditioned for many years to say work and personal lives are different. And all of a sudden, in the last 1 year, they have got fused. Do I know the lives of my team members and the circumstances that they operate? Do I know the sacrifice that a lady is doing, especially in India, where generally it is correlated that men means work, women means home. And look at the life of the lady. She has to manage her career. She has to manage kids, probably her parents, in-laws. No domestic help, support systems have crumbled, and she's making tough choices. Do we know what has happened to women in the last 1 year in the workforce in India? 34% women pre-COVID was employed in India in the workforce. Do we know what it is today? It is 17%. 17, from 34 to 17% in the last 1 year in India. Women have gone back by 10 years. Mothers, sisters, friends, people of a superior race, the mother, has gone back 10 years. And if you and I don't feel about it, who else will? So, what else can we take for granted? What else do we take for granted? Please open your eyes. I wanted you to do this exercise because the eighth point is, do we really listen? Do we see what is altered? Do we recognize it? And do we identify, therefore, what needs to be solved? Right? So, I don't have anything more to share. I wanted to use this time to invoke. I wanted to use this time probably to give you some experience, and probably my endeavor is that what if each of us can go back to our communities, our people, and be a cause and matter to understand and stand for equity. So the pursuit has to be equity, not diversity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Prasad. Thanks a lot for enlightening us on this topic through some wonderful stories, key points, and the exercise, and giving us this experience. Prasad, the first one is, how important is meritocracy for an organization, and how is it different from equity?
Okay. So you said meritocracy, right?
Uh, Meritocracy, yeah,
Yeah, it is meritocracy. It should be that. So anyway,
yeah.
some of these words just will simplify it. It's about a culture where performance is cherished, right? And this is a beautiful question fundamentally, right? Sometimes we do correlate that, pursuit of equity means we may be compromising on performance. Now, here is where it is, right? Like in the story of Uttejana that we are seeing, if I say that, and that beautiful picture, if I can share, okay, so I'm just sustaining this, right? See, this image is quite powerful. Now, for this question, it doesn't really mean that we are compromising on performance in pursuit of equity. Equity is recognizing that in this case, all children who have come to the college, we give them the same thing, that is equally, everybody is equal. But we got to recognize that people are coming from different backgrounds, and there is inequity because they don't have the same privilege, they don't have the same base, they don't have the same sports shoes that you need to run in the race. So equity is not about compromising on who finishes the race first. Equity is about ensuring that, can you provide them with the shoes? They are without the shoes. Can you provide them with the gear? Can you provide them with nutrition? So it is about creating, then, without compromising on pursuit of performance, ecosystems where the minority can actually thrive. So it is a balance that you're able to bring in both, not compromising on one over the other.
Okay, the next question is how to get corporates from looking at superficial metrics around inclusion and equity initiatives.
Yeah, so see, some of the points we discussed are, you need to look at it as, if this were the fallbacks, then what is the opposite of it is usually what we need to do, right? And it does require endorsement and belief from, there has to be evangelists in the organization, usually your somebody from your sponsorship, from the most senior most team who believes and understands this. Once you start from there, start with understanding why is it important for us as a business, right? Every centered conversations and questions. It's important to linger longer with the questions than get down to actually acting, forming the easier things about, checklist items, right? It is to stay longer with the question. It is to stay longer with what it means for us. What is the opportunity we would get if we were an inclusive workplace? What we would get if everybody in our consumer base, in our talent base, when talent is only going to get scarcer, perceived as absolutely being an equitable workplace? What are the opportunities there? What are some of the uh, hindrances we have, and what is the state of affairs? You can even actually take partnerships, independent people, to come in and audit some of your organization's practices and beliefs and perceptions, to find out where you are currently. And from there, again, use those philosophies of creating opportunities. How do you tackle them? Set them over a period of time. It all also depends on the kind of organization that you're operating, the size of the organization, right? Some goals can be 3 years. Some goals in a smaller organization can be achieved in as much as 1 year. When you set up a goal, again, use those three things, right? Put a goal, put a measure to it, and put a time to it, right? So it has to be those points that we mentioned of the eight. One of the ways to look at that is when you go about setting some of those initiatives, try to use these as pivots and keep checking that, is it doing this? Is it doing this? Is it doing this? That's probably one way to think about how to go through, building this in the organization. Sometimes you don't even need to do it with a name, right? If you still bring about the focus on practice and behaviors in your values and how day-to-day work experiences transpire, your processes, your appraisal systems are having transparency, objectivity, there are control mechanisms, and you are monitoring the measures of it. It's simple things like that that actually build up an environment that could be equitable and inclusive.
Sure.
I'll give an
Thanks.
example as well. I'll give an example, one simple example. In ClearTrip, we were expanding in Middle East, and we are even today a 62% market holder in the online travel market in Middle East, even though most of the planes since last year are still beautifully parked in the tarmac. But when I had to hire, so when we expanded into Middle East, both organically and inorganically, you're working in markets like Dubai, Saudi, Egypt. I realized that as diverse as India is on different race, culture, and multiple other things, and ethnicity, Middle East also is equally diverse and split. So most of the time when we did strategic hiring in the Middle East, we seconded talent from India so that they could be cultural ambassadors. They know the clear trip way, and they were seconded to take on those mantles. I had the role of a regional HR director in the Middle East. And I made sure that the easiest option, while it was for me to take somebody from my team in India and deploy there because you're moving with velocity, I made sure that one, I hire a lady into that leadership team because we didn't have a lady in the leadership team among the group of men there, and there were flavors there. So simple things like being committed over your easier decisions and sometimes business pressing decisions to actually make that kind of a decision are important, right? You don't want to miss out on that opportunity. You have to set an example.
Sure. One last question. So, Prasad, you spoke about data point about working women, reduction from 34% to 17. So, there's a question on which institute, has provided this data, or from where it was picked.
Yeah, it's a shocking one that I discovered actually last week. And I don't think it is published, obviously, for the dubious reasons that it is. I was reaching out to my friend who's working in a well-known law firm that works with corporate, of leagues of Facebook, etc. She has got people in the employment ministry, and when we chatted up, she told me the stark figures that you're witnessing from the employment ministry about women in workforce in India and what's happened during the pandemic. That's the source. And I believe there is also I haven't seen that report. I believe there is also a McKinsey report that was published in the US around women and workforce with some very interesting content during this time, which actually even alludes this is not a phenomenon to India, but the other parts as well during this pandemic. So, unlike any conceptions that women, we think that women with this work from home it's made their life easier. I think we need to quell those perceptions. It's made life more difficult.
Sure. Thanks once again, Prasad, for this wonderful session. And if people have questions, they can reach out to him on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Prasad, and thank you so much, Jitin. Prasad, it was truly a very informative session, and thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for all the information and experiences that you shared. Thank you.